Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chapter 4, Assistive Technology for the Young Child. This is, uh, a good aspect of this textbook because it does deal with very relevant issues in early childhood IS. So, early intervention in assistive technology. Developmental delay is assigned to children from ages birth to 9 years who exhibit signs of delays in development, and we'll talk about the categories in a little bit. Early intervention, EI, are services offered to children from birth to 3 years, and I'm going to show you how you can locate information on service providers on the internet at the end of this lecture. Established risk condition criterion can lead to eligibility for children. These criteria include low birth weight, identified syndromes, and chronic illness. Usually a pediatrician would, identify these, and we'd work on a referral basis from there, usually through a service provided through the Ohio Department of Health. Assistive Technology and the Individualized Family Service Plan, IFSP. The team develops the IFSP to meet the needs of the family and to utilize the family's strengths. Well, ideally, the family's included in that process. The IFSP is a document very similar to the IEP because we're making individual accommodations, but we're really also planning for developmental benchmarks and how to achieve those. So instead of curricular goals, IEP goals, we're really looking at developmental goals. But the IFSP focuses on the family, whereas the IEP focuses on the child. Why? Because the family is going to be the principal form of support and working on the developmental issues. Service delivery. Providing assistive tech in the natural environment requires training in the use of the AT by family members, professional, and other caregivers. So, for instance, people working at some kind of community daycare to work with the child. The case example, the case study for this one was, the child needed to have that corner chair to be able to learn how to sit in a in a functional manner. So the people at the daycare, the church-based daycare that she was at, they were trained also in using that, as well as I think the communication device later on, which was just a communication board. The natural environment is any location where typical developing children can be found. Okay, so we talk about many aspects: home, school, but can also include playgrounds, if the school's bussed in, the bus, etc. We have to take all those environments into account. So how we talked about adaptive frameworks before, right, or adaptations frameworks. We talked about the set and accounting for the environment. That's another component, and this plugs right into the whole environmental issue. If you look at the end of that chapter and figure 4.1, the assistive technology spotlight, so the family, assistive technology, timeliness, environment. So the FATTE model, that's a model of an adaptations framework. So that's the same thing that we're talking about as using the set, right? So we're accounting for student characteristics, environment, tasks, and then we select tools. All those components are in there except the inclusion of family is a big component in that as well. So transition. After a child reaches the end of their EI, their early intervention, a service coordinator will work to move them. So we're working on our first real transition plan, right, into preschool special education. That's then they become supported instead of a community agency or some third party that's been contracted by the Ohio Department of Health. They transition to their local school service provider, which is their local school district. And they're going to be in preschool special education services. The service coordinator also has the role to ensure the family's access to services they need for the child. So they still continue to help coordinate and source out support for them. They're not left high and dry. At least ideally they're not. Preschool special education is required under IDEIA for all children ages 3 to 5 with disabilities. Assistive technology and service delivery. Planning for assistive technology. During a child's development, they reach developmental milestones, specific abilities a child masters during growth. So, we look at Piaget, we see all kinds of developmental milestones by age, right? Children at risk are those children who have a greater potential of developing learning problems due to factors in the environment, biological, or other established risk factors. When a developing child fails to meet, and the authors of the book really spelt meet incorrectly, it wasn't me, a milestone, meet a milestone, more or different types of support need to be considered. At this time, AT devices to meet specific needs may be implemented to aid in the development. AT should be a major, assistive technology should be a major component in that family service plan. In that, again, they talk about cost not being an issue, but cost under the law isn't an issue, but the reality for being able to provide funding to be able to get access to the assistive technology, it might be an issue. So you do have to factor that in for parents, especially if they're assimilating the cost. During the evaluation of the referral and assessment for assistive technology, the IFSP, IEP team need to look at all the aspects of the family dynamic, assistive technology, timeliness, and the environment. Again, that's the adaptations framework we were talking about that they suggest in Figure 4.1 in the textbook. On the IFSP, AT is usually listed under supplementary aids and services. The IFSP should be reviewed every 6 months due to the rapid development and changes of the child. So they might outgrow the assistive technology rather quickly, and then we have to replace it with something else. Assistive technology funding considerations. Children can outgrow AT just like outgrowing clothes. Cost of new AT devices should not be a factor in providing the device or not, but again, we just talked about the fact that if the family is assimilating the cost, it is a factor, so you need to take that into account. Your textbook does provide a lot of links that you can get online, and you can look at sourcing different technologies and loaner programs, which are highly suitable to this demographic, to this age group, because they do outgrow the technology quickly. Assistive technologies for student learning. All children and learning environments are different. Numerous types of AT may be needed to allow children to access their learning environment. Service providers should look closely at switches, and that's what part 2 of this lecture is going to be. I'm going to move on to switches so you guys know exactly what we're talking about. Switches facilitate interaction with the environment by the use of input or output devices. Examples of switches, joysticks, buttons, sip and puff systems, etc. Those are really pneumatic switches. But I'm going to show you all those with pictures so you get a good idea of what's going on. Assistive technology in play. AT should be an integral part of daily activities. For the child, AT should be a part of the child's active environment. Play is an integral part of a child's development, and it's important that the child with activities have some involvement in activities the same as a typical child. It's the idea of normalization that the child, and inclusion, that the child should have the same kind of activities as any other child in general ed, and we try to include them with their peers their non-disabled peers to to try to get them involved socially as well. Adapting activities in the environment. Young children with disabilities should be included in activities with their peers in developmentally appropriate activities. Accommodations should be made for children with disabilities to allow them to interact with their peers. That's just what I said. Assistive technology and toys. Toys are important in child's play, and we learn a lot from toys at an early age. With a simple switch adaptation, children with disabilities will be able to play with a toy without the assistance of a caregiver. In your textbook, there is, in figure 4.3, or table 4.3, sorry, there's a link to adapting toys that should show you how to adapt a battery-operated toy with a switch. So if I were you, I'd take a look at that link. It might be very useful. So then they're able to press the switch and play with the toy without the assistance of a caregiver. They are able to manipulate it just by pressing one button. Assistive technology and literacy. Children start to become literate from birth. For children with disabilities, AT may be needed to aid in the process. This may include listening to stories for children who are language delayed, text-to-speech software for children who are visually impaired. Assistive technology and developmental domains. As part of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, 5 developmental domains are recognized. Those domains are adaptive, cognitive, communication, physical, social, and emotional. Children who have significant delays in development in one or more domains are eligible for early intervention or preschool special education. AT can aid a child with developmental delays so that its effect will have a minimal impact on their learning and development. Okay, so a couple of answers to questions that might have popped into your head. Let's just close this up for a second. So during the reading, they talked about a corner chair, right? So that in fact is the corner chair. So you just have something that makes a corner, and this is actually a little junction here, right? Of course, they can include cushioning around them to make them more child friendly, and there can also be a pelvic belt, so a belt that goes around so the child is secured in. Again, it just keeps their posturing correct, so they learn to sit without tipping sideways. And this strut in the middle helps keep the legs apart, so they learn that the legs need to be apart to actually keep stability. If we're talking about the identification of resources for early intervention, if you go to ohiohelpmegrow.org, you can take a look at special needs, and there's resources here that you should have a little look around at that will help you in looking at services, who offers diagnostic services, etc. Okay.